The GWM Cannon Alpha plug-in hybrid is one of just 3 plug-in utes currently available in Australia. It's full of tech and value, and it can tow 3.5 tonnes. So as more electrified utes come into the market, is the Cannon something you should aim for? Let's find out. The front end of the Cannon Alpha plug-in, pretty similar to other Cannon Alphas in the range. PHEV badge here to indicate that you do have the plug-in hybrid electric version here, and petrol fill up here, and there's charging in a similar position on the other side of the vehicle. Obviously the spare in the back here is there to make room for the battery that's under the cargo tray here. And the rear tailgate's interesting in that it can open like a barn door to let you push gear further into the back of the ute, but it can also open like a regular ute too, so some extra capability there. The operation of the tailgate through the use of this one button at the back here, it's not the most user-friendly, particularly if you're not familiar with it, so it's not very intuitive. But you know, there are gas struts here on the tailgate which make it a much softer opening and a softer close, but at the same time, you know, would a simple lever be more user-friendly in a work situation? Maybe. So looking at the back of the Cannon Alpha plug-in, you can obviously from here see that the tow bar is pretty low to the ground, and that might be affecting the departure angle if you're getting into some rough stuff. At the same time, you can see the thinking as well though, because right up under here, this is where the high voltage battery is, and coming off, you know, some rocky terrain, you're going to want the tow bar to be hitting whatever it is on the ground before the battery. Inside the Cannon Alpha plug-in hybrid, and especially in this ultra top of the range model, is really where you start to see the value proposition come through. For example, the brushed metal finishes here, the fake wood finish on the dash, which looks okay. You know, obviously it's fake. There's some good sound deadening. It's really quiet in here when you're underway, particularly, you know, given when it's running on electric. But little features that you get for that low price of around $61,000 drive away in WA. Things like, you know, the little twin lights that you get on the sun visors there make you feel a bit Hollywood. Wireless charging not just in the front of the vehicle but also in the back for the rear passengers. Their seats as well are heated and cooled on the outer 2 seats in the back. In the front of the Cannon Alpha Ultra model, you get not just heated and cooled seats but also massaging seats, and there are several different functions that you can choose as well, so you're going to be pretty comfortable in this model. As well as all that, there are some really important practicality features to the interior of the vehicle, and in particular I'm referring to the buttons for those main functions rather than those functions and their control being buried into the screen, which is something that you can't say about a lot of new vehicles on the market today. There's a volume button on the steering wheel, but that's the one feature that is buried in the screen for the passenger, so only the driver has got a physical button here. But apart from that, things like the rear view mirror controls, obviously there's regular buttons for that most people will be familiar with. HVAC controls, so the air conditioning and the defrost. Aside from that, there is also, you know, the heads-up display in this model too. If you're about 6'3" and over, you might run out of adjustability with that, and just meaning that the seat doesn't go low enough and the screen doesn't go high enough. And things like the analog clock here in the dash is something that has appeared on very expensive cars in the past, and it does work pretty well. It's fine. It's something that you can see at a glance and doesn't get affected by the sun shining on it. So the refinement in the interior, the functionality is mostly pretty good, and for the money, it's not a bad option. So there's lots of little details that can, you know, make life easier and more convenient on the inside of the Cannon Alpha. You know, you can open this cubby hole up here, and this little sliding tray, you know, you don't have to worry about coming out and, you know, having to refit it. It's just got this cool little sliding thing on rails here that allows you to reach in there and then just put it back easily. The cup holders are quite hidden. They're still in a good spot. It's really easy to operate the seat heating and cooling controls here, obviously on buttons as well, plus all the major four-wheel drive functions for low and high and that sort of thing. The sunroof obviously here as well, buttons for that on the top of the roof here. In the back, wireless charging for your phone. there's cup holders and also a little cubby hole, and all of it is integrated into the fold down armrest section as well. It's a lot of gear, a lot of luxury, and even more surprising, it's packed into a price of just over $60,000. So competes pretty well and pretty convincingly with some of those much bigger players. So we're just driving in normal mode here in the Cannon Alpha plug-in, and there's a bit of lag when you put your foot down that you need to compensate for when you're in traffic in particular. But of course, when you put it into dynamic mode, sport mode, I should say, it starts to access the full 300 kilowatts and 750 Newton meters. And at the moment, our battery is running low on charge, so you might be hearing the petrol engine being used a bit more, but it still does retain some charge in the battery as well, so that can still help you along the road. It definitely goes pretty well, and it's surprisingly quick for such a heavy vehicle, about 2.8 tons. But you know, it's still not a sports car. It's very long. It's got a lot of weight hanging out the back behind the rear axle in the form of the drive battery. But at the same time, you know, it's quieter than perhaps a diesel ute might be. Although it's a small turbo petrol, it only takes 91 unleaded, so you don't need to put 95 in as you do with quite a few other hybrid vehicles and quite a few other turbo petrol vehicles. There are some interesting little customizable features like it remembers what drive mode you're in, so that it doesn't just revert back to normal or back to eco when you park the car and when you start it again. But really the biggest change recently has been how much less intrusive the driver assist features are. Just the calmness and the lack of need to interact with the screen, usually while you're driving, to adjust some of those features that your driving style might not be suited to. And we certainly welcome the extra development, the extra tuning that GWM has put into making the vehicle much better suited to Australian tastes. So the Cannon Alpha plug-in's rated towing capacity is 3.5 tonne, and it will do that reasonably easily with the full battery and, you know, a full tank of fuel. But you know, obviously that's going to really step up significantly when the battery runs out, which will be more quickly when you're towing that sort of weight. But when the battery does run out and you're running on just the base load amount of charge in the battery plus the petrol engine, that's when you're really going to see a big increase from that 1.7 litres that's on the official label up to sort of around, well, on the highway, even without towing anything, we were getting around 10 litres per 100. Payload capacity, you know, it's a bit below the Shark. It's a 685 kilos, so certainly not a leader in that respect. But bear in mind that also, you know, how often are you going to be putting 600 plus kilos in the back of a ute that typically really is better suited to urban driving, given the limited distance that the battery capacity provides it. So the Cannon Alpha was rated in 2024 by ANCAP and it got 5 stars. Part of the reason why I got that score was that it had reasonably functional and responsive driver assist system in terms of how the steering moved around with this emergency lane keep assist distraction that was sometimes caused by the speed monitoring functionality as well, which was not only a distraction to drivers but also a distraction when drivers were wanting to turn it off, which is really not something that you want. Really is something that prompts drivers to turn off a safety feature. Credit where credit's due, they've really changed the vehicle and they've changed its nature significantly. GWM is the brand that brought us the Aura small electric car. It's also brought us the Jolyon as well, those Jolyon badged vehicles, small SUVs that come as hybrids or petrols. But it's come a long way in its tech as well, and now we've got, you know, this large plug-in hybrid ute with a battery that can power it for about 85 kilometres in the real world. It'll be rated in the brochure as a bit more, but that's what we found it gets in real world driving, and all of the extra tech that comes with it. So what do we like about the GWM Cannon Alpha plug-in hybrid? Well, it's excellent value given the sheer quantity of gear that you get for the money. The build and finish quality is excellent, and the driver assist systems are far better tuned than they have been in previous versions of the Cannon. And what do we dislike? Well, it's really at its best in urban areas with a fully charged battery covering short distances. The durability as well of this hybrid system is not really fully known in market, given it's only been around for a few months. And thirdly, the spare wheel in the cargo tray is going to impinge on those who want to use its full capacity. The Cannon Alpha plug-in hybrid has got a 3.5 tonne towing capacity, it's got the biggest battery, and for electrified urban ute duties, it's tough to beat.